Hey ABC, it's Greeno. Well, welcome to 2018. Been a couple months since I made a video, and thought I'd kind of jump back in, but I'm kind of going to try and head in a little bit of a different direction here, going forward. To be quite honest, just a little burnout on just showing new stuff, talking about new stuff all the time, and actually I've cut way back on picking up new records or just out digging old records or whatever, and have been catching up on all the crap I bought over the last however many years and digging back into the collection. And I've been noticing I really dig when people make videos just showing stuff out of the collection, talking about old records, and not so much just, hey, here's what I got, here's what I got. With nothing against that, I've done that for years, and I'll probably do some more of those in the future. But I want to shake it up a little bit, and like I said, just kind of, excuse me, go in a different direction here. So what I kind of want to do is, like I said, I've been digging back through the collection and just, checking out stuff, and hitting on records that are like favorites, albums I just love and are just a part of me. I've heard so many times, especially from when I was younger. The albums that really hit you the most, that get embedded in you, somehow. Repeat listening as a kid, where just unfortunately, as an adult, you don't get to put 50 spins on one record anymore. You know what I mean? But so anyways, kind of what I'm going to kind of try and do here is just pick out 3 or 4 albums, and I've been pulling out and spinning, and kind of just share them, almost like albums that I wish everybody, if they haven't already heard them, would kind of check out. Just give them a shot. See what you think. And this isn't going to be all metal, not at all. There'll definitely be some metal in here, I'm sure, but actually these first 3, not metal, but albums I love and have an emotional connection with, I guess you could say. So let's kind of get going here. These first 3 are from like a time, well, I don't know how to start this. Late 80s, like 88, 89, into early 90s, 90, 91, maybe into 92. That's like a special time, man. There was some really cool stuff going on there. For me personally, man, my nose, I don't know what I got going on. For me personally, it was like a change. I was coming into my 20s. I was in college. Met my best friend, who I'm still best friends with, almost 30 years. And he's a big music head. I was a big music head. But like the stuff we were into, and still to this day, it's like, if this is what I'm into and this is what he's into, we kind of cross over about like that. But it's enough that we keep each other interested, and we're constantly, trying to turn each other on to new stuff and making fun of each other for what we listen to and everything else. But because of that, especially that time when we first started hanging out, we were digging through, the stuff we had and sharing stuff and finding new stuff. It was a really cool time. And it was a cool time because, like I said, from like 88 to 91, 92-ish, there was all these bands that didn't quite fit. You had, me, I was coming out of the metal thing, hair metal was huge, or just over the top in the late 80s, and I was just completely burnt out on it. And I was still, into the thrash thing and the more underground, checking out some of that. And he's coming out of the punk scene and, and new wave and all that, and he knew all that stuff. But we both crossed over a little bit. But at that time, all these bands that were coming up, they weren't quite metal. They were heavy, and some weren't heavy, but they weren't, they weren't punk or anything like that, or new wave. They were kind of these lost bands, those 4 or 5 years right there. And it's amazing stuff, man. And him and I have talked about it before. It's like it almost needs like the new wave of British heavy metal. It had a name, The thrash metal scene had a name. Those 4 or 5 years needs a name of some sort. We've never come up with one. But anyways, these first 3 albums I'm going to talk about today are from that era. And there's a ton of these. And I might, maybe even the next, because I've been pulling some out and listening to them, just kind of revisiting. So even the second video here, the next video may be about some of these bands. But the first one, I can't remember who caught on to these guys first. It was, I don't know if it was him or me. I'm thinking it may have been him. But, and I think I've shown this probably years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. But the Big F. And this album, it came out in 1989 on Elektra. And this album just completely blew me away when it came out. I didn't know what to make of it. It's so good, but it's like, are they metal? Are they alternative? And at this point, alternative was kind of getting started, you know what I mean? Mid-80s on or whatever, I guess. It wasn't alternative you think of today that was on the top 40 alternative, which is an alternative, of the early to mid 90s and on. But back then it was like I said, this band didn't quite fit. They weren't a metal band. They're heavy, but they're not a metal band. And they're more than a hard rock band. Alternative metal, I don't know. Amazing drums on this. It's like a tribal thing. It's not just 4/4 stuff. There's a lot of double bass on here, but it's slow, pounding double bass. Catchy, cool hooks, killer vocals. And like I said, they were a 3-piece out of Los Angeles. 2 of the members come from a band you kind of wouldn't expect, which is Berlin. And they are John Crawford was the bass player in Berlin, but he was the bass player singer in the Big F. And Rob Brill was the drummer. And this is a promo copy, and it has like a little bio thing here you can see. And actually I think there's pictures, or a picture of the band here. Berlin. But anyways, after Berlin, these guys go on and they start the Big F. They pick up a drummer and get signed to Atlantic and release this. Like I said, man, it's, if you're a hard rock guy, if you're a metal guy, and you're a little open-minded, so worth checking out. I originally picked that up on CD. I still have the original, got years ago. They didn't make a dent or anything. They actually got played on, again, one of those crossover kind of things. They got played a little bit on Headbangers Ball on MTV, and they got played a little bit on 120 Minutes, which hopefully everybody remembers 120 Minutes. It was the alternative show, you know what I mean? You had the metal on Headbangers Ball, and all the alternative underground rock was on 120 Minutes with Dave Kendall. But early on anyways, I think, yeah. But anyways, like I said, I bought the CD originally. It came across the vinyl, years ago. I actually got a couple copies and sent a copy to LJ. Kind of a blind send. He'd never heard of them, checked it out, and he ended up loving it too. It's an overlooked album, and it's a real shame. Also, was lucky enough to come across the single for Dr. Vine, and just, the album version and an edited version. These guys had 2 or 3 videos. You can find them. They're on YouTube. There's one for Dr. Vine, one for Kill the Cowboy, and there was one other one. Albert Tango, I think, was the other one. A couple years later, like 93 or so, they get dropped by Elektra, picked up by Chrysalis, and they put out their second album, their last album, which is the Big F is not as strong an album. A couple good songs, but just, you know, like I said, just not as strong. And here's a single for that with actually, I guess you call it an EP. It has a couple extra non-LP tracks on it. But the debut is, I put this on and just go from the first track to the last track. Every song is killer. Just a fantastic record. And again, it's from that era, that crossover era. I don't know what to call it. But it was a great time. There was so much interesting music coming out. Good, interesting music. And people were trying different things. It's like, what's the next thing, you know? For me, in my head, it kind of started with Jane's Addiction, man, you know. Total whack out band when I first saw them. You know, on the Nothing Shocking. They had the live album, and then Nothing Shocking kind of hit. And it seemed like that kind of blew the doors open on these bands were a little more accepted, you know, acceptable or whatever. And they were showing up on MTV on specialty shows. It's not like you would see them at, you know, 1 o'clock in the afternoon or anything, but at 1 in the morning on 120 Minutes you would see the Big F. So anyways, give the Big F a try if you've never heard them. The first album definitely is worth checking out, but yeah, it's mainly that first album. Just amazing album. Alright, next up is a very strange band. Very cool band. Awesome vocalist, I think. Band out of Ireland called An Emotional Fish. And unfortunately, I've never come across this on vinyl. This was released in 1990. This is their debut. They had a little bit of a hit, kinda, on, you know, the alternative scene, whatever you want to call it at that time, called Celebrate. But this whole album is killer. Vocalist is very a big voice, booming kind of voice, kind of deep. And yeah, like I said, they're from Ireland. There's a U2 thing to them, and that's not what caught me, because I'm not a fan of U2. I like the first, you know, couple albums. After that, yeah, I have no use for them basically. But they're by no means a U2 ripoff. Here's a picture. But there's something U2-ish kind of about them. They're not a heavy band. They can be kind of like a sonicness to them, like a little, I don't want to say psychedelic, but it can get a little swirly here and there. I was lucky enough to see these dudes at the old 930 in downtown Washington, D.C., 930 F Street. Got to go see them. It was during the week, like a weeknight. May have been 20 people there, if there was that many. And you know what? I think they opened for Jesus Jones. We went down to see them, and An Emotional Fish was opening, if I remember correctly. And like I say, it wasn't a big crowd, especially for An Emotional Fish, but more people, I think, showed up for Jesus Jones. I think that was the same show. Either way, they were fantastic. They were much more kind of trippy live. The guitar player was killer, man. He was like on his effects. He had a, you know, constantly working the pedal board, all of his pedals, and, you know, wah and everything, and crazy hair. You couldn't even see his face. He was just into it, man. Down, you know, head down and playing. I remember standing right in front of him, like knees up against the stage, watching this dude. It was just like blowing my mind. And I looked over, and the singer's like singing and like touched my forehead. Whatever. But it was like, wow, you know, this is a fucking weird show, man. But they were fantastic. Really cool band. And again, there's videos on YouTube. You can check these guys out. Just a different band. And again, you know, they're not heavy. It's, you know, they're definitely more on the alternative rock side of that era. But such a cool band. And that was their debut. And then, like, 93, I think the second album came out, which was Junk Puppets. Again, just like the Big F, nowhere near as cool. It's okay, just like the Big F, but just it's not great. Really not worth tracking down. But the self-titled debut, I think, is very much worth checking out. Very cool band. I think they even had a third album, but I don't even think I ever checked it out. So that's an Emotional Fish, you know, band out of Ireland. Give them a shot. All right, next up is a band out of Dallas, Texas. I got turned on to them on their second album, come out in 1990. And actually I got turned on to them because they had a bit of a radio hit. A couple songs actually made the radio. They weren't big hits by any stretch of the imagination, but for a month or two, they were getting played here or there, especially on college radio. And like I said, I was in college at the time. And the band is the Buck Pets. And this was the album, their second album, Curatones. And the singles was basically Pearls and Libertine. And it's such a cool band. Again, you know, it's rock. It's not heavy, not near as heavy as the Big F. Probably closer to what would become mid-90s alternative rock. These guys were definitely ahead of the game, unfortunately, which kind of, you know, they were done by the time this kind of stuff really took off. But this album's great, again, from start to finish. I just always loved this record. And this was a sealed copy I found years ago. And actually just busted it open a couple months ago and was spinning it. I've spun it a couple times. About ready to put it back on the shelf. But I had the CD. Yeah, this is what I, you know, played the hell out of as a goofy college kid. And again, these guys, like I said, were on that rock side, the alternative rock. Really good songwriting. Some cool oddities in some of their songs. I can't remember which song it was. Shit, I can't remember now. But there's this cool, complete time change. Like right in the middle of the song, it goes from, you know, a slower beat to just like, you know, triple time. You know what I mean? Just like that. Very cool and unexpected. And like, they were just good songwriters. Their first album was called the Buck Pets. It's come out 88, 89, somewhere in there. Much more raw. It doesn't have, this is very well produced and a big production. It's pretty shiny. You know what I mean? Compressed. We're getting into that. We're getting into the 90s where everything started having that compression on it. This doesn't have that as much. This is much more raw, more rock oriented. Just a looser production. And then their third album was To the Quick. And again, okay record, okay album. Not essential. And kind of the same thing goes for the first album. I would take this one over the third album, but you know what shines out of the three is the Curatones. This is the one to check out. Very cool band. And it's crazy, you know, like they had their moment. I can remember driving up on the campus and Pearls being on the radio. And like I said, it seemed like it was a month or two. They were just kind of around, you know. You would see the videos on 120 Minutes. They didn't play them on Headbangers Ball. And you would hear them occasionally on, you know, local college radio or something. And that was it. It was over. They were kind of done. You know, it's like, what happened to the Buck Pets? And then the third album showed up, and it was just kind of a disappointment, and that was it. But you know, again, they're in that time period, that 88 to 92-ish time period. You know, basically 88 to when Nevermind came out, which I know came out in the end of 91. But you know, 92 is when everything really, you know, exploded. And everything kind of changed and went more in that direction. But up until Nevermind come out, all these bands were kind of like, it was like they were trying to figure out, you know, what the fuck is next? What are we doing next? What's the next sound? Can we be the next oddball, weird band, you know? And it ended up being, you know, Nirvana, which I never thought would happen. Listening to Bleach, you know, the whole time before Nevermind came out, and I loved Bleach, and I still say Bleach is a better album than Nevermind. And hearing them getting signed for all that money, you know, at the time, is like, man, it's just a little crappy band out of Washington. You know, why are they getting all this money? Somebody heard something and figured something out, because definitely made their money back. But and that's kind of in my head, that's kind of the cutoff for all this stuff. You know, it's like once Seattle broke with Nevermind, you know, everything went in that direction. It's like everybody has to sound like Eddie Vedder, or you know, we need, you know, 50 bands that sound like Silverchair because they sound like Nirvana. So it kind of, you know, and then, you know, everything just went to shit with the alternative radio of the mid 90s. And that's when I got into alternative country, which I'll be showing some of them too. So if you're willing to hang out and listen to me babble about this crap, yeah, climb aboard. Like I said, I'm gonna try and make some more of these as we go along here, as I pull stuff out. And yeah, it may not be this concentrated, where everything, like I'm saying, these three I showed here kind of go together a little bit in my head, anyways, from that era. Yeah, maybe something from the 70s and something from the 90s and something brand new I show you next time. I don't know. But anyways, that's it. And I'm going to try and keep these a little on the shorter side and not be making these 40-minute videos all the time, which I don't know what this one's going to end up being. But hope everybody's doing well in the VC, and I'm still checking out videos when I can. I just watched Bit Bop Boom John about the wrestling records and all that. Fantastic video. I'm not a wrestling guy. I watched it when I was younger, in the late 70s, early 80s, and thought it was cool, but I didn't get big into it. But I can listen to John talk about stuff and his take on things, which were kind of similar on some of that stuff. Great video. Just watched Scott showing EPs, metal EPs from the 80s. You know, Scott always does quality videos. Love them all. And everybody else's videos. You know, I'm still around. So, alright, BC, that's it. See you in the next video. A little later.